International news now.
So there is news to report. The president of Catalonia spoke to Parliament. It was delayed, and he said that...
He stepped back.
Well, first he said he wants to follow the people's will for independence. He got cheers. The ballots say yes to independence. This is the will that I want. This is the will that I want to go forward with. At the historical moment, as the president of Catalonia, I want to follow people's will for Catalonia to become an independent state. That was at 12:39 our time. Then he said, today, I assume the mandate for Catalonia to become an independent state in the form of a republic, but we're suspending the declaration of independence for a few weeks because we want a reasonable dialogue, a mediation with the Spanish state. So we want to move forward, but we're going to slow down the process here, try and have a dialogue, try and have negotiations. All right, so that's where things stand as of about half an hour or 40 minutes ago, but let's now take a step back and give you a brief summary of what's been going on in the last couple of weeks. So Catalonia held a referendum for independence from Spain on October 1st. This development is a big threat to the unity of the European Union and poses big questions about competing values of democracy and state sovereignty. The vote was overwhelming. 90% of voters supported independence. Remember, we said 90% of voters. However, there was a low turnout, about 42%, which raises questions on how deep the support for independence really is. We've seen counter-demonstrations in the rest of Spain, as well as in Catalonia, that have supported national unity and opposed Catalan independence.
So there's competing demonstrations. There's both for and against.
So we've got an audio clip now from National Public Radio that give us some background on the politics behind this vote. So let's run that clip.
Over the past couple of years, we've often had cause to wonder if the European Union might be coming apart over some very divisive issues, the debts of fiscally strapped southern European countries to wealthier northern Europe, especially Germany, the disproportionately large burden of the refugee crisis on countries at Europe's periphery, and the rise of nationalists who bridled at concessions of sovereignty to Brussels. Well, the violence surrounding Sunday's referendum in Catalonia in support of independence from Spain points to another question. Is a European member country in danger of coming apart, and might others follow? Well, today there was a general strike in Catalonia, and Spain's king went on national television to rebuke the Catalan leadership and to stress the illegality of the referendum. Joining us from London is Anton LaGuardia, who is deputy foreign editor of The Economist. Welcome to the program once again.
Nice to be with you.
And first, what's the significance of the Catalonian vote and the controversy over it for other countries in Europe?
Well, I think there are two things to look at. First of all, do events in Catalonia create a precedent for other would-be secessionist, independent movements around Europe? And it's easy to think of them, Scotland, obviously, Corsica in France. The second issue is, if Catalonia were ever to become independent, what does it mean for the EU? Does it count as part of the EU automatically, or do they have to reapply? And the EU has debated this and come out and said a breakaway country would have to reapply for membership, which obviously makes independence less attractive for the people who would like to leave.
Was Europe unusually quiet about the events on Sunday in Catalonia, where the Madrid government's response to this referendum was pretty ham-fisted?
I think the EU is unusually tongue-tied. The statement that they came out with was a mixture of trying to please all sides, saying, the referendum, so-called, was illegal, but they also expect, in brackets, Spain to live within its sort of democratic norms. So they hedged and would really rather the problem went away, rather than having one more difficulty, explosive issue on the sort of litany of problems that they already have, as you listed.
One dimension of the Spanish conflict is the distinct ethnic identity of Catalonians and the Catalan language. Another dimension is people in a rich region wanting out of a generally poorer country. Can you think of a region in Europe or a country in Europe that has solved that kind of problem fairly creatively and might serve as a positive model for Spain holding together?
So there are a number of richer bits of Europe that would like to break away. One can think of Flanders in Belgium and northern Italy, which is much richer than southern Italy, and feels that a lot of the money that is raised in taxes in northern Italy is misspent either by politicians in Rome or on wasteful projects in the south. Has any country solved it? Well, lots of countries have transfers from richer to poorer regions. The country I'm sitting in is one such. Britain has, London, which generates vast amounts of wealth because of financial services, and that then is spread out to regions to, support poorer regions, particularly in the north, that have deindustrialized.
Where do you think we go from here? What happens next in Spain?
Well, I think that both sides need to step back. Prime Minister Rajoy runs a minority government, and he has gained a lot of support in the rest of Spain by taking a hard line against independence movements. I think that he will have to negotiate a deal that gives Catalonia greater language rights, maybe greater rights to hold on to the money that is raised there. And I think that in the end, there has to be an orderly process by which Catalans are asked, do you want to remain or not remain in Spain? I think to deny the right of people who feel themselves somehow to be different, to be a separate nation, the right to at least debate the issue is counterproductive.
Anton LaGuardia, Deputy Foreign Editor of The Economist in London, thanks for talking with us today.
Nice to be with you.
All right, so the initial vote on October 1st was declared illegal by Spain. Spanish authorities have tried to prevent the vote, and then there was substantial use of force to disrupt the election. Catalan leaders were arrested. Carolina just gave us an update. There are sources now within the Spanish government saying that the Spanish government is going to interpret the speech as a declaration of independence, and they are formulating, as of now, a response to this. Let's take a step back for a second and talk about why does Catalonia want independence. There are two major reasons that the clip discussed. First is identity politics. Catalans consider themselves as a distinct ethnic group with their own language and culture, and the language is the key ethnic marker. Ironically, autonomy granted to Catalonia by Spain has allowed the region to control its educational system and reinforce the Catalan language in schools. All instruction in schools is conducted in the Catalan language rather than Spanish. This has created a generation of Catalans who feel more distinct from Spain and the Spanish language. Now, there's also major economic reasons. Catalonia has become wealthier than the rest of Spain and does not want to subsidize the rest of Spain through taxation and transfers any longer.
Okay, so what about the reaction from the European Union? And the European Union has basically stood behind Spain. The president of France, Angela Merkel, leader of Germany, have both contacted the prime minister of Spain and voiced their support for the territorial and unity and integrity of Spain. There's fears here that whatever happens to Catalonia and their drive for independence could have a contagion effect on other ethnic groups seeking autonomy. They're mentioned in the clip, Flanders in Belgium, the Basque people in Spain, and so Spain could really dismember. There's Galicia in Spain too. I mean, this place could really start to disintegrate. And then Scotland, which held its own referendum in 2014 with the approval of Great Britain, and it was voted down.
Think here about the parallels where we started class talking about the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and the parallel here could be the European Union as the Soviet Union trying to hold things together, and that, if you have one successful secessionist movement, that it generates spillover and cascading effects.
And here's another thing to think about is reaction here, and what a lot of commentators are afraid of is the dangers of nationalism, especially in Spain. Spain had fought in the 1930s a bloody civil war, and nationalism has often been associated in Spanish history with fascism, and so there hasn't been a lot of public display of Spanish nationalism, but there is now. And so there's this story in the New York Times today about how even just a couple years ago, any sort of public display of the Spanish flag was very seldomly seen, but now it's all over because of a reaction to Catalonian efforts for secession and independence. And so there'll be this backlash or reaction from the rest of Spain that will have implications for that country and Europe. And so what the EU arguably wants to do is control this and manage this. And so EU rules stack the deck against secession. The EU requires that breakaway states gain independence according to the constitutional rules of the country they are leaving, which Catalonia has not, because it's against the constitution to hold these sort of referendum in Spain. And regions wanting independence must leave the EU and be readmitted. And readmission requires unanimous consent of all EU members, which would include the state that the region left. So I doubt that that would happen. So thus, Spain would have a veto over Catalonia's readmission into the EU. And without EU admission, the economics of secession look a whole lot worse. And then there's the final thing about the chaos that could be produced once Catalonia gets independence. And there's a good story in the New York Times again about this and how there's what the independent secessionist movement really is a bunch of different groups that don't agree on anything except independence. From the far left to the far right and everything in between, they have one overarching goal that unites them all. But then once that goal is achieved, and this is the same thing that happened in Russia following the collapse of the Soviet Union, is that they couldn't agree on what to do after they achieve this big goal. And so you've got that problem as well. Catalonia is going to be facing a lot of economic issues. There's already signs that big banks and other economic forces are leaving Barcelona, are leaving the region because they're afraid of what will happen after potential independence.